Hello, welcome to 2020 Tasty Treats with GourmetQuilter. We're having a lot of fun with 20 different foundation piece blocks at the moment. So these are the 20 blocks we're doing. These are some blocks that we've already done. We're just doing amazingly. We've done 10, so we're halfway through. So today we're doing foundation block 11, which is an ice pop, and it's made in two segments. So I've got the two segments here. This is how it's going to look. This is the little stick that an ice pop sits on. And if you've already registered with GourmetQuilter, you'll have a pattern like this that you can print with the foundations there for us to roughly cut out something like this. So there's still a margin around the outside of the dotted line, because the dotted line is the trimming line. So I'm going to go ahead. If you've been following along, there's nothing particularly new about doing this block, but I thought we'd show you how to do it anyway. I've already made the stick that you hold on to when you eat these delicious things. I thought we'd spend time on the delicious part. So whilst I've got a very nice soft fruity one in my sample that's already up here, I thought we'd really go for delicious. So we're going to have a nice chocolate, raspberry and orange ice pop. So I've got my pieces of fabric ready, I've got my background pieces ready, and I'm going to go ahead. So if you remember, we're just on the piece 1, so these pieces are all numbered. We go add them in numerical order. So my orange is going to be down the bottom part here, so we're putting it so that the right side of the fabric faces away from the paper, so wrong sides together. Because it's just a large piece and it's just going to sit there, I'm going to put a little dab of glue, and I'm just going to position my pattern right over that so that it just sits, and it'll just sit where you put it now because of that little bit of glue. Not too much glue, you've got to be able to remove it easily. And then we're going to have the raspberry section next. So we want that to be right sides together with our orange. And to get this angle, because it's on an angle, we're going to just fold our piece of paper over. We can also fold the piece of fabric that's sitting there over so that we know where to position. So by folding it, you can see where the segment goes that we're trying to cover. So by folding it, we know that we need to, you have to just be able to see through a little bit, but I can see my fold lines. That area is what needs to be covered with our next piece. So putting them right sides together, I'm going to position this piece along here. I know that then this piece down here is covering. I know it's plenty wide enough because it's quite generous, this piece, and I can stitch along that line there. So I'm just going to go ahead now and stitch that line. That's that one there, knowing that this piece of red is going to come out nicely where we want it to be. So I'm stitching, starting just before the line across. I've got my stitch length reduced. Normally I'm on a 2.5, I'm on 1.5, and I've just got some cotton thread and a regular needle in. So before we trim anything, we can doubly make sure that we've got enough fabric and we've got plenty there. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim that seam. So I'm just folding back along that stitched line, and I'm trimming approximately slightly less than 1/4 of an inch away. And now I can press that piece up. And now I'm ready to put my piece of very delicious chocolate on top. So that's all ready to go. Same thing, I'm going to fold that down along that line. I've already pre-folded these lines so they're ready to go. And I can position that piece on there. Remember that it's going to be flipping up that piece to cover that piece there, so we can just double check if you want to just fold it, but then it all moves, of course. Folding that back down again. Making sure that we've got enough there to stitch a seam line, and that there'll be enough when it flips up to cover the whole of that top piece of the ice pop, because we really want chocolate all over that top piece. And And I'm stitching on that line, not near the line, not next to the line, but stitching right along that line. And so I can go ahead now and fold that back and trim that off. And I can press it. And it's looking pretty delicious already. And so now there's some pieces here to go along the top. So we've finished all the coloured section in there, but we need to put this around the background on now. So we just start with a very small little piece along the top there of the background. So again, I've pre-folded all my lines, and I can place a small piece behind there that I know is going to fit, and I can stitch that on. So compared to some of the blocks we've been making, this one's just a little bit quicker and easier, which is kind of nice to have an ice pop being nice and easy, something so delicious. Don't want it to be too hard. Fold my paper back, trim off my seam allowance there, and press it. And so I'm just going to continue on, because really we're just doing the same thing again. Now that you've seen how we've got started, we're going to continue in number order. We've got piece 5, which again is just a small triangle. So same thing, we can fold along the seam line and place our piece behind, and then with B6 as well. And then we've got to put the 2 sides on next, and then the corners. So I might go ahead and put my top triangles and the sides on, and I'll come back and show you with the corners. So I've gone ahead and I've been busy adding all my background pieces, but I've still got one of the corners to go. But I've added one corner already, and it's looking pretty delicious so far. So same thing, this time I've cut a larger square, and I've cut it in half to make 2 triangles, and I'm folding back my corner along the sewing line and with the fabric, and then I can place that corner, that triangle, underneath there, because the fold is where the seam line is going to be, and I can just double check that that's going to fit. That's plenty big enough, that triangle, so I'm all looking good. I'm going to go ahead and stitch that on along that line. And now I just need to trim up. So remember, we're just tearing away any paper if we've stitched into that segment previously. Fold back the paper, trim the seam allowance, press it, and then I can trim the whole segment so that we can join it together and put the little popsicle on top of its little stick. So that's all done so far, but we do need to trim that block up. So just trimming right along that dotted line. So the little stick for the little bit that we hold when we eat one of these popsicles is really very similar. It's just a little piece for the stick and some triangles around it, and then the 2 side pieces. So much the same as I've done here for the popsicle, in fact. So I think you'll be able to manage to do that one. So that's my little popsicle. So just remember, I've suggested that you might want to consider popping a dab of glue when you've got a fairly large piece that might flap around, that might just get caught on something at some stage, even though we will be pulling those papers out soon. It's just helpful to have them in place. And so now all I've got to do is stitch those 2 together, and we'll be done. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to press my seam. I think I'm probably going to press that one open, so that works quite well. Press it again from the front, and there we have our block. So all that needs to be done now is removing all those papers from the back, which I'll do later. This delicious, we've gone ahead and we've made a 11th block. Woohoo! Things is looking good. So that's looking very delicious with its chocolate topping. You may not want chocolate topping, of course. You might prefer to have a nice, cool, minty ice pop or something like that. But so that was foundation piece block number 11. Please do have a look on GourmetQuilter.com for some more information if you're interested. Otherwise, I will see you back here for foundation piece block number 12.